Hello and welcome to the series Entrepreneurship and Parenting. In today's episode, we'll be discussing how to set up the correct entity that you want in order to start your company. Now, as we talked about, if you're a parent and you want to become an entrepreneur, or you have a dream that you want to realize that you want to have your own company, the next step in this episode is about setting up your company or your entity. The first advice that I'm going to share is, if you're a parent like me and you have kids and you're busy, you want to try your best to delegate some of that work. And what I mean by this is, I'm not saying you're hiring people or anything like that. What I'm saying is, there are ways that you can utilize a service to set up your company. And I know some people say, oh, Mukarram, I don't want to spend that $200 or $300 to set up a corporate entity when I can go online, I can do that in 30 minutes or 1 hour. I get it. But it's not just about your initial setup, it's also about the yearly maintenance of that entity. So my advice to you is, once you choose the type of entity, and I'm going to go over that in this episode, you should hire a service like LegalZoom or a registered agent service to file your paperwork so it's done correctly, and then they're the entity that can upkeep that paperwork every year in your annual reports and everything that has to be done. Okay, it makes it so much easy when you're a parent and being an entrepreneur. Like, this series is for parents who want to become an entrepreneur. So this is a time-saving tool. Okay, now, what kind of entity? Is it an LLC? Is it a C Corp? Is it an S Corp? Or is it a sole proprietorship? These are the four most common ones: LLC, C Corp, S Corp, and sole proprietorship. In this episode, we're going to break down some of the key factors that you have to understand in order to make the decision for you to get the right entity that you want. So let's say, if between an LLC, a C Corp, an S Corp, and a sole proprietorship, first let's take the biggest parameter that I look at, what I call liability protection. First, before we get into which entity gives you a better liability protection, what is liability protection? It simply means that if you have a company and that company has certain liabilities or debt that the business will accrue over time, then if something were to go wrong, or if you have some dispute, then nobody can come after your personal assets. That's what liability protection means. The company assets and the personal assets are separate. Now, when it comes to this, if you look at an LLC, a C Corp, or an S Corp, you get liability protection with that. Meaning, if something goes wrong, nobody can come after your personal assets. If you have a sole proprietorship, you do not have any liability protection. This is why right off the bat I want to say a sole proprietorship is the most risky form of owning an entity or the entity structure, and it's also not the best choice. Even though it's easy on the upkeep and the admin work, it's very risky. So don't go with a sole proprietorship just because it looks easy, because you want to plan towards protecting what you're building. I always say that to everyone that I work with: build something that won't be taken away from you one day. Okay, because we've all gone through events that have taken away things from us. So we want to build something that cannot just be taken away because of mistakes that you did in the beginning. Okay. The next thing is taxation. When it comes to taxes, which entity has the best advantage for you? So here's how I look at taxes. With an LLC, you have what's called tax flexibility, meaning based on the number of members that are part of the LLC, you can choose to get taxed as a sole proprietorship, as a partnership, as a S Corp, or a C Corp. So you have what I call tiered tax flexibility. You can choose that. With an S Corp, you have only one type of taxation. There's no tax flexibility, and that is where the S Corp has shareholders, and whatever the income that's distributed to the shareholder gets taxed once. So it has actually taxation at the shareholder level, but you only get taxed once. A C Corp has what we call double taxation. What do we mean by that? Meaning that the corporate net income, like the income that you make for your corporation, gets taxed once, and then whatever amounts that you pay to your shareholders gets taxed again on the shareholder side. So you get both corporate level taxes and shareholder level taxes. So in that manner, I think the LLC is the best choice if you are a new business and you're setting it up. It's a great starting point because you have flexibility with taxes and you also have liability protection. Now, the next thing that I want to talk to you about is if you have a skill or a product that you're thinking that you want to market or sell internationally, or if your exit strategy, and I know it sounds too early to talk about an exit strategy, but you always have to have that goal in mind. How do I want to grow this company? If your exit strategy is to go public or to raise money from investors, then there are some structures or entities that prohibit that. For example, with an LLC, you cannot intend to do business internationally, or you can't go public with an LLC. But if you have an S Corp, again, you can't intend to have business internationally, or you can't take it public, right? But with a C Corp, it's the best structure if you intend to do business internationally. If you want to raise money from investors, it's the best structure. It doesn't mean you can't raise money from investors with the other structures, but this is the best structure to do that with. And also, if you want to go public, a C Corp is the best way to do it, okay? So just to summarize on that, if you intend to go to do business internationally, an S Corp and LLC won't allow you to do that. And if you want to go public, an S Corp and LLC don't allow you to do that, but a C Corp does, okay? Now, next thing that I wanted to share with you is the upkeep. Because when you start an entity, every year you have to renew its license, or it's called an annual report, and you have to do those things. Remember how I said in the beginning of this episode, hire a company. It's a small fee, but it's worth it, because if you have kids and you have a job, you don't want that to derail you from making sure that your company is in good standing at the end of every year. Sometimes you miss a payment, that annual report payment, and you'll get a big penalty and you have to reinstate your corporation. You don't want that. That's why you want to have a registered agent service or a company handle that for you. But in terms of admin upkeep, the least admin upkeep is for a sole proprietorship, and the most admin upkeep is for a C Corp and an S Corp. An LLC is not as heavy when it comes to the admin upkeep. So if you're listening to this episode, you'll see that if you are starting a business, a new business, and you're structuring this correctly, the LLC has the best advantages for you when it comes to taxation, when it comes to upkeep, when it comes to liability protection, compared to other entity structures, okay? So hopefully this episode helped you kind of understand which direction you want to go in when you set up your entity. If you have any questions, comments, like I said, anything you want to share with us, please say that to us on our comments. And remember to follow us and join our episodes every week when I come up with a new episode on this entrepreneurship and being a parent series, okay? Thank you, and happy and wonderful investing.